Letter 5. Kalabagh, Northwestern Frontier Province, India, October 13th, 1932. Beloved Satsangis in America, we left Mathura by motor bus on August 21st on our way to Agra. 7 miles from Agra, we paused to see the tomb of Akbar, the Mughal emperor. The tomb of Akbar. There it stands in solemn and lonely grandeur within sight of the ancient Mughal capital. It was built by the emperor's son, Jahangir. While not to be compared with the Taj, yet this tomb is a magnificent structure, beautifully inlaid walls in multiple designs and colours, surrounded by tall minarets, and in the midst the mortal remains of the greatest of the Mughal rulers. From the top of this monument we had our first glimpse of the Taj Mahal, standing 7 miles away on the banks of the Jamuna River. We are now in a region famed in history. Here the ambitions of man led him to unparalleled heights in the achievement of empire, the amassing of treasure, and the building of splendid monuments. But these monuments, now weather-worn and faded, their immense treasures scattered and gone, are all that is left of the vast empire and the glory of Akbar and Shah Jahan. It would seem that here the genius of man had made his supreme effort to immortalise himself in piles of marble, and here also the vanity of such an effort is most apparent. 2 opposing forces. As this disciple saw the beloved master standing in the dim light before the black and silent sarcophagus of Akbar, it occurred to him that right there in his presence were 2 of the most illustrious examples in all history of the 2 great opposing principles in nature, destruction and construction. The one, representing the principle of destruction, sought to build up himself into empire and glory at the sacrifice of tens of thousands of his fellow beings. At his feet he forced millions to cringe in abject submission and fear. But now all that is left of him and of his vaunted power are a few decaying bones encased in marble. The other, embodying the principle of construction, is a genuine Superman, a real prince among his fellows. Having achieved the greatest conquest possible to human beings, namely the conquest of self and the emancipation of his own soul, he now seeks, in utter forgetfulness of self, to rescue others from the downward stream of birth and death, and to lead them to the supreme heights of immortal life and happiness. The empire of the one, built upon force and bathed in blood, has vanished from the earth, and his bones moulder among its ruins. But the empire of the other, built upon love, shall endure when the earth itself is dissolved. In Radha Soami Bagh. We arrived in Agra at 3:30 and put up in Radha Soami Bagh in rooms once occupied by Baba Jemal Singh, our master's master. Close by these rooms they are building an extremely beautiful monument in white marble to the memory of the first great Radha Soami master, Swamiji. When completed, it will in some respects rival the world-famous Taj Mahal itself, for in simple beauty and elegance of structure it would be difficult to imagine anything superior to it. we meet a nephew of Swamiji. Soon after, our luggage was unpacked and we had washed off some of the dust of travel. Our first visit was to the bedside of Sid Sahib, a nephew of Swamiji, now 74 years of age and in feeble health. This was the real objective of our master's visit to Agra, for there is a very close bond of love between the two, and it would appear that the end of the earth life of the one is now approaching. Two real saints meet. The meeting of these two great souls was something beautiful beyond the power of words to describe. It was one of the supreme moments in the life of this disciple. The small group who were fortunate enough to witness this event stood in reverent silence while our master approached the bedside of the other and with folded hands bowed at his feet. This disciple was quite accustomed to seeing thousands bow at the feet of our master, but never before had he witnessed the master himself bowing at the feet of another. By this sign, we knew at once that here was no ordinary man, and never did our master shine more brilliantly, never was his own divinity more apparent than in that beautiful moment when he bowed at the sacred feet of another saint. This disciple felt that the event he was now witnessing was of even world importance, and he sensed that perhaps in the far-off heavens of light that event carried deep significance. This great soul says he has never taken a morsel of animal food in his life. He was initiated by Swamiji 60 years ago, and almost from childhood he has been devoted to Sant Mat. He says that now Swamiji himself visits him daily, bringing blessing and good cheer. Meeting with this great soul was to this disciple a real benediction and will always be remembered with gratitude. Model Industries in Dayarbagh. Next day, this disciple visited the Model Industries in Dayarbagh, presided over by Sahibji, the leader of the large Agra Satsang. These industries are quite remarkable, actually manufacturing many of the most useful articles of daily life and putting out a very superior product at a reasonable price. They incidentally afford employment to a great many satsangis. They conduct a dairy on modern lines whose equipment and management are equal to the best in America. They are making skilled workmen of thousands of men, a thing much needed in India. The Agra Radha Soami Group. The Agra group of Radha Soami disciples is not connected with the Radha Soami movement in the Punjab, presided over by our master, except by the ties of a common brotherhood and a similar teaching. There is amity and cordial good fellowship between the two groups and their leaders. An American Satsangi in Agra. At Diyarbagh, Agra, this disciple had the pleasure of meeting Mrs. Elizabeth Bruce, an American Satsangi who, so far as he knows, is the only other American in India devoted to this science. She is a very clever and brilliant woman, making herself useful in some phases of the industrial work of the centre, while she seeks light on the inner path. This disciple took lunch with her twice and enjoyed some hours of pleasant conversation. It requires no little courage for an American woman to leave all of her friends and a successful business in the homeland and come out to India to devote herself to a spiritual science, quite strange to all her people. But Mrs. Bruce appears to be very happy in the pursuit of her spiritual ideals in Kalabagh, and we wish her all success. The Old Agra Fort and Shah Jahan. In the afternoon, we visited the Old Agra Fort, now held by the British, of course, and then we visited the old palace of Shah Jahan, the builder of the famous Taj. After a long reign over a vast empire, the building of the Taj Mahal as a monument to his favourite queen Mumtaz Mahal, and many other noted structures, including the Pearl Mosque and the Peacock Throne. Shah Jahan was imprisoned by his own son Aurangzeb, who then usurped the throne. After 7 years of imprisonment in a small room adjacent to the Pearl Mosque in this palace, his strength about gone, and realizing that his end was near, the old emperor begged that he might be taken to a small porch in the palace, from which, looking across a bend in the Jamuna River, he might get one more look at his beloved Taj. His request was granted, and he beheld with much emotion that magnificent monument shining in all of its glory. It is said that on seeing the Taj, the old and heartbroken emperor collapsed and died right there. Thus ended, so pathetically, in the year 1666, one of the most picturesque characters in history. He passed from earth as a victim of one of the strangest freaks of fortune ever manifested. It is told here that once, when Shah Jahan was at the height of his world power, he was visited by a spiritual guru who admonished him about certain things, whereupon the king laughed at the guru and asked him who could interfere with the emperor. The guru replied that the words of the true guru are always fulfilled, even though the greatest of emperors has to be made to eat like an ox in the field. And it so happened that during his imprisonment, Shah Jahan was taken for a ride one day into the country. Passing a field of gram, he asked his guards to get him some of the grain. The guard refused, saying that he would endanger his own life by doing so without the emperor's orders. But he offered to lead the camel into the field, make it kneel, and himself go away to attend to other matters, leaving him to get the grain himself. But his hands were tied, so he could not get the grain, and he had to content himself with kneeling and eating like an ox. When he had done so, he suddenly recalled the words of the Guru. His heart was softened, and real faith entered his soul. The Great Taj Mahal. The next day, this disciple visited the Taj Mahal. Many books give elaborate descriptions of it. Perhaps the best one will be found in the Stoddard Lectures, so no attempt will be made here to describe it. It is sufficient to say that it is, no doubt, the greatest, most beautiful, most artistic, and the most expensive structure ever built by human hands within the period of known history, and it is equally certain that no such structure or anything like it will ever again be attempted. It is said to have required the labour of 20,000 men for a period of 20 years to complete it. The whole world was explored for materials. Extensive portions of the Quran are written into the walls, making each letter of black stone, and then inlaying them into the white marble. Many beautiful designs and pictures in wonderful colours are made by inlaying precious stones and costly gems into the marble walls. The building is nearly all of white marble, even the floors of the extensive courts and promenades surrounding the Taj itself. Majestic as it is, after 300 years the Taj Mahal stands today, trying pathetically to defy the crumbling hand of time, as only one more memorial of the perishable nature and vanishing glory of all things human. To this truth, the Taj will continue to bear testimony until its last marble column has returned to dust. Crowds continue to greet the Master. August 25th, we left on our return trip to Beas and the Dera. Every hour or two, all through the night, as the train stopped at the various stations, crowds gathered to see the Master. At the capital city of Delhi, a carpet was spread and a chair placed for him. Hundreds gathered around him and listened to a few cheering words, and then he gave them his parting Radha Soami. We arrived in the Dera the next morning at 9 o'clock, where a crowd of several hundred were waiting to welcome him home, showing the utmost joy and devotion. It is always a great delight to see the beloved Guru again. Many had already begun to arrive ahead of us for the monthly satsang. So on Friday the 27th, probably 3,000 were present at satsang. The next day the number had more than doubled, and on Sunday the Master was greeted by a multitude of 12,000. Loudspeakers were installed so the entire crowd could easily hear the Master's voice. Many hundreds initiated. Following this meeting, the Master initiated 571 souls, after deferring the usual large percentage of applicants. During this gathering, this disciple was with the Master in an upper story of the Master's house. The Master stood by the window for some minutes, watching the crowds. Many had grown weary and dropped to sleep on the ground all around the compound. Hundreds of others stood about in small groups, engaged in conversation. The Master turned to this disciple and asked him if he had ever found anything greater than love. He then quoted one of his favourite sayings, "Where there is love, there is no law." The divine mystery of love. And what is the divine mystery of the love of a disciple for his Master? It is one of the most absorbing themes of discipleship. It is something without a parallel in the ordinary walks of life. What is it? How can it be explained? What is the mystery of that holy bond which makes men and women, even in the hour of death, utterly forget all earthly ties and cling to the Master alone? Fortunately, this is one theme upon which this disciple can speak from personal experience, although he is well aware, perhaps because of that experience itself, that he can never give adequate expression to this theme. Since coming to India, this disciple has been blessed with the daily companionship of many disciples, whose devotion to the Master has written one of the most beautiful pages in the story of his life. Not only these, but the abiding devotion of the Master himself to his Master adds interest to the theme and crowns the relation itself with undying glory. It is a sacred bond that, once formed, is never broken, and its divine fragrance never diminishes through unnumbered years. But like other features of this holy path, the essence of it cannot be written down in words. It cannot be described in human language. To be understood, it must be experienced. This disciple has seen hundreds of men and women waiting at the Master's door, even at the outer gate, waiting during all the long hours of the day and night, just for one look into his face and to hear his voice in one word of blessing. Only last night, as this disciple came down from the Master's rooms about 10 o'clock, he witnessed a sight that would touch the heart of any man. 4 flights of stairs leading to the Master's room on the top floor of the hall in Rawalpindi were literally lined with men and women, crowded close together and standing. Some women holding infants in their arms, all waiting the possible chance that the Master might again come downstairs, and they might thus be near enough to have his darshan once more. And this will continue hour after hour until at last the word is passed around that the Master has retired for the night. Often the dear Father continues to see and talk to these people until midnight or later, and then he gets only 2 or 3 hours sleep. For he rises at 3 o'clock or earlier sometimes to engage in spiritual devotions, or leaves the physical plane for his work in the higher regions. And so he continues until 6 o'clock in the summer and 8 in the winter. It is love on the part of both master and pupil, which the world knows not of, and it is quite beyond their understanding. The writer has seen men and women of all ages and degrees of culture sitting in satsang from 1 to 2 hours, listening to the Master's discourses, their eyes sparkling with keen delight, and frequently tears of joy trickling down their faces. One day he watched an elderly man of 60 years or more as he sat listening to the Master. He scarcely moved his eyes from the Master's form, and for over an hour the tears constantly dropped from his cheeks, while his hands remained closed in an attitude of profound adoration. And this was a cultured man, retired from the medical service of the government. Only last night in satsang, a man of 35 years, educated, refined, and very wealthy, sat listening to the Master, while occasionally the tears dropped freely, apparently unnoticed by himself. So absorbed was he in the light of the Master's presence. This is a relation almost too sacred to write about. But the following extract, taken from his diary, will be suggestive at least. This writer is deeply conscious of his own unworthiness, yet infinitely grateful to the Master for his loving kindness. October 5th, 1932. Now on the eve of our departure for Rawalpindi, the beloved Father inquired after all plans and arrangements, and ordered a change in the plan regarding my servant, so that he could remain with me tonight and help me in the morning. Bless his holy name. No earthly father was ever more kind and solicitous, even of the material comforts of his children. How can I, bless him enough. If only I could serve him better. How has he become my very life? It is a deep mystery, but an infinite joy. And how has this heavenly mystery come about in my life? It is so out of the beaten paths of ordinary experience. If the uninitiated were to read this, they would probably assume that the writer was a mooning girl sighing for the lover. To the average Westerner, it is quite beyond understanding. But all who have themselves walked this holy path know well that in all the world there is no relation so close and so sacred as that between master and pupil. There is no other relation so crowned with a frenzy of divine joy. When the disciple feels that every ray of light that radiates from the Master carries with it streams of life itself, he must love him. When he realizes in the depths of his being that the Master is the embodiment of the supreme essence, now engaged in recreating the disciple after the image and likeness of the ineffable Lord, then he knows that life without the Master would be an insufferable calamity. So his thought is always of the Master. In fact, he would say, in the words of Bulwer Lytton, not to think of him were the absence of thought itself. With affectionate goodwill, I am, your brother at his sacred feet, Julian P. Johnson.